Welcome, my name is Tisha, co-owner of So Creative Lounge, and in this video we're going to learn how to add a quilt label to your quilt. Alright, so you finish your quilt, it's machine quilted, and we are ready to make the label right before we put it into the binding, right? Because we want to be able to sew the label into the binding as well, right? So I recommend this wonderful site. It's called Quilt Alliance, and here they have tons of information as to the statistics on people who label their quilts, because we have history has shown us that we have so many quilts out there, but it's not documented. So historically, that information has gotten lost. So the most important thing, and I find that highly important, is to make sure you documenting your quilts. Make sure it has the name and the date. If you don't have those two things, if you don't do just those two things, then you're just leaving it to history to write your story, or to, it just gets lost. So we want to document our work. Again, something as simple as a permanent gel pen, something that's not going to smear or smudge, that's waterproof. You can literally write this information onto your quilt. So here I have a quilt, right? This is as simple as it gets. Here's a quilt, and if I wanted to just in the corner, right in the space, just put my name and date it, do that. Okay, that's like the easiest thing you can do. But I want to show you why it's important, the additional information you can put into your quilt, and how to do it. It really doesn't take a lot of work. Okay, but if the least you can do is just taking a permanent pen and writing your name and putting the date, and if that's all you can do, kudos to you. Do that. Okay, do that. All right, but for those other people, now to take it to a whole nother level, it's probably going to take you no more than 30 minutes to make a quilt label. Okay, and again, over at quiltalliance.org, they have some great information there on all this information as to how to document your label and how to make one. And what I love about Quilt Alliance is that they were at a quilt show not too long ago, and they gave away quilt labels, which I thought were so cool. So here they have their card here, which I thought is really cool. And I believe they sell them. Okay, I believe they sell them on their website. Quilt shops can get them and keep them in their shop as well. But it looks something like this, which is really, really nice. Okay, and it's just blanks, but they have beautiful frames or beautiful borders, as you can see. And we'll talk more about that as well. So like I said, the most important thing is your name and the date, when and where, right? Now there's other information that you can put on your quilt. Everything from if the quilter is important to you. You want to document the quilter, so you can put the quilter name in there. You can put the purpose. Is this a birthday or wedding? The recipient name. I'm gifting my quilt, the one that I just showed you, to my daughter, so I want to put her name on it. This is for you. Some people want to add the dimensions, the name of the pattern. Mine is the exploding heart, so if that information is important to you, you can add that. The fiber content, which is really important, and how to care for your quilt. I think that's really important as well, especially if you're gifting to someone and they're not sure how to wash or maintain their quilt. So that information might be really important. All right, with that being said, let's talk about what you should be putting your quilt label on, right? And so some examples here. Again, this is Quilt Alliance. This is like an off-white, but it's cotton. Here is another one that I think I probably got off of Amazon. Most quilt shop have like pre-made quilt labels that are a panel, and you can cut them up however you need. These have a little bit more color. As you can see, the borders are different, and the information that they're asking for is different. For example, this one is asking for the quilt name. So Exploding Heart, that's the name of the quilt. The maker, it will be me, I'm the quilter. The start date, the finish date, if that's important to you. Stitch with Love by Mom, completed 2026. For my daughter, made by Mom in 2026. So as you can see, each of these are different. The information is different. And so these are really, really nice. Once you've chosen one, you can just cut it out, fold down the raw edges, and fuse it in place. I always use fusible webbing on the back of it so it stays in place as I'm hand sewing around it. So some people don't like fusible, so all of this is optional. It's all personalized, so it's really up to you and what it is, how much you would like to put into your quilt label. Okay, so here we have one here. So this is one, which is the Quilt Alliance, just the frame and border. Here's another one with more information, some images, and here's just a solid piece of fabric. And if I just want to start with that, that's great as well. So you don't have to buy a quilt label. You can just make it out of any cotton fabric you have. Now, I do want to bring your attention to one other thing. What's common about all three of these? They're light colors. None of them are dark, black fabric or red fabric. They're light colors so that I can take my pen and write the information I need onto that label without it getting lost behind the color because it's too dark. You can't see it. Okay, so again, 100% cotton fabric, light colors. Okay, especially if your writing tool is a dark color. Okay, and again, you want to make sure that your pen is a permanent marker that's not going, I really recommend you testing it too. That's not going to smudge, that's not going to smear, and that's waterproof. So if you find that you want to write in the corner your name just to test it out, okay, just test it out in the corner, throw it into the washing machine or hand wash it just to test and make sure, do so that you know what the reactions over the period of time, how this fiber is going to handle you writing that ink on that fabric. Okay, so test it out. And again, when you're using any of these tools, you want to heat set them as well. Okay, so once you write on them, I usually let mine set and then I'll come back and just heat set it with a nice hot iron. I do put a piece of paper towel over it and just let it, and just go over it like good 10 or 15 seconds. You know, just really getting that ink into the fabric. Okay, and then I'll let it sit again, and then I'm ready to take my label, either cut it out, fuse it, and put it onto my quilt. Some other different ways. So say for example you didn't want to write on your quilt. Some people hand embroider. So if you wanted to write your name, and then come back with embroidery thread, which I think is so cool. Some people do that. Some people have embroidery machines, so they'll take a piece of regular cotton fabric and just take it to the embroidery machine and print it out on their embroidery machine. So that's a cool way. Okay, so there's so many different options out there. Just find the one that works for you. Okay, I also had another sheet from Quilt Alliance that I did want to share with you. So they have labels already on their website. This is free. You can just download this information, transfer it to fabric. Like, you can literally take this. I have a print at home that I could literally run this, download this template, fuse my fabric to freezer paper. Here I have some freezer paper. I could literally run this through my printer and it will print this information out onto the fabric, which I think is so cool. So try that. However, you'll notice that on their label they have already pre-selected the information that's going to be on the quilt. So if you find that you don't want to use someone else's label, again, you can always make your own. Okay, you can actually make your own Word or Mac document, make it a quilt label, and every time you make a quilt, all you do is press it to some freezer paper. Make sure you turn down the raw edges and run it through the printer. How cool is that? So you don't have to worry about using someone else's information, and then you can really personalize it. And I've seen some people with poems and a whole paragraph just about the quilt and everything, and I find that information to be really cool as well. So there's so many options out there. Just find the one from the simplest to the most complicated for some of us. Just find the system that works for you. Okay, find the one that works for you. All right, with that being said, let's make a quilt label. Alright, as you can see, I just finished embroidering everything that I want on my quilt label. And so with embroidery stitches, you have a lot of jump stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this up, remove those, cut this down to size that I want, and fit it to the corner of the quilt that I would like to have it in. Alright, so let's go ahead and clean her up and remove the hoop. up. I'm going to take a lint roller across that, clean it up. I'm going to cut some of this tearaway down. I'll probably leave about one layer on here, but some of this I do want to take off. And if I wanted to pick a little bit more out of it, I could, but I don't want to take too much out of it because they do just provide some kind of stability to that area. We'll just cut right into this a little bit, just a little, or tear away some of this. There we go. Beautiful. Okay. And maybe some of that second layer. The first layer is okay, but not as much as that second layer. Okay. All right, let's take a look at that. That looks beautiful. Really, really nice. Again, go back over it with the lint roller. And this is going to sit in the corner, something like this. So I'm definitely going to want to cut my fabric and get it ready. All right, now here's my quilt. And I want it to go in a corner on an angle so that the side seams fit right into the quilt. And I want to stay away from the edge. Don't want to bring it too close to where the bias tip is going to be. But I'm liking that. Almost like a little pocket in the corner. And I'm just going to pin this down to this. And once I pin it down, I'm going to press it out. And if I wanted to fuse it, I can. But I'm going to hand sew this in place. Now I'm ready to cut this down. I'm just going to trim it off, and I can always come back to trim it down even more. Beautiful. So if I want to, I could top stitch this in place, which I think I'm going to do. However, I do want to make sure I'm matching the thread to the right side of the fabric. So I have black on that side, which is great. And I'm going to put a light gray at the top. A really light gray. Or I could use the same thread from the embroidery machine. So my quilt label has been pinned in place, and I decided just to go ahead and base it all the way around. So I want to base it around the top edge, and then I'm going to come back and base it around the cut quilted edge there. And then I can start adding my binding. So let's go ahead and sew this on. Now I could do this by hand, or I could do it by a sewing machine. It's really up to you. I just decided to do it by machine. Alright, that looks beautiful. So I'm going to flip it on the other side so I can sew down and see the edge of the quilt here. And I may need to flip over my pins. Bring up the needle. Now I don't want to come too close into the seam allowance because where the binding is going to be, so be careful about that. Now I know that I have the gray thread at the top and the black thread at the bottom, but remember this stitch will be hidden, unlike this stitch here. This will be seen, so that's why we put that in black. But this stitch will not be seen, so we can go ahead and use the thread that we have, which is pretty nice, so that I can make sure that when I'm adding the binding, that is hidden. I'm going to go ahead and lengthen this stitch because it is a basic stitch in the length, and so I'm going to take that up to a 5. All right. I'm just using a pin like to keep the fabric, that raw edge laying flat as much as possible. I am going to flip these other pins over. All right, we have a based label along our quilt, and that looks amazing, amazing. So now I can trim this down and we are ready to apply our binding to our quilt. Wow, I hope you had a wonderful time learning how to add a quilt label to your quilt, and so did I. So I hope you had fun and continue labeling your quilts. See you then.